Hello and welcome to the Midweek Tackle as not one but two AFL players take on the AFL Appeals Board. Some very heavy tribunal hearings taking place as we speak. We'll have all of the AFL team news for you very, very shortly. My name is Lauren Wood. I'm joined by Glenn McFarlane and John Ralph from the Herald Sun. And Ralphie, as we sit here, Charlie Cameron has just officially been cleared. That three-match ban has been thrown firmly out the window, but gee, it doesn't feel like we're any clearer on this tackle stuff, does it?
Lauren, not for the first time this year, I will say it. The AFL Tribunal has proved an embarrassment. Oh, this is really unfortunate. So Cameron's case thrown out over the rule of law, not whether he did it, not whether he didn't do it. So potentially he was found guilty twice this year. And the first time, the Tribunal said, the good bloke rule will let you off. And the second time, no matter whether you believe he's guilty or otherwise, we wanted the case to stand for itself, not legal mumbo-jumbo. And instead, as we'll talk to David Zita in a second, he got off because of a technicality over Law 18.7 about rough conduct, whether that rule was applied, the rules of the game. What the hell does that mean, Macca?
Oh,
We've got less clarity than we started with.
Yeah.
How in God's name does the average punter have any idea what's going on?
And forget about the average punter. What about the player that's got to go out there? Yep. We're 25 hours away from players going out there and competing again for this next round of matches. What are they thinking? They've got every right to be confused, angry, and not know what's going to happen. They're going to be second-guessing themselves. It is an embarrassment. We've got to this stage, and somehow we've got to get through to the end of the year, and then we've got to do something really serious and just correct this problem.
Yeah, how does Sydney feel? So they get screwed over on Isaac Rankin, as they feel, basically.
Isaac Heaney.
Yeah, actually, third time lucky. And all of a sudden now they think it's okay because at least Charlie Cameron's not playing, and then they get this decision as well. So Isaac Heaney, of course. Everyone's confused, and I'm confused as well.
Yeah, it's been an interesting argument. We'll get to David Zita in the newsroom shortly, who's been right across this. But as you said, Ralphie, it wasn't essentially the tackle that was argued tonight. It was the legalities of the rule, how it was argued, and then how it was not argued, I suppose, on Tuesday night. So, as you say, we're no clearer. All of the coaches seem confused, the ones that were asked at their press conferences today, and players even more so.
Yeah, and of course, this is the same tribunal that had an error of law over the Patrick Cripps decision. Now, at least having looked back at that decision, and that was a decision that paved the way for his Brownlow medal win, that same appeals board, they felt it was not a bump. They felt he was contesting the ball. So at least if you feel like Patrick Cripps might not have been able to get off, you think at least that's the fail-safe here. This one looks like a pure technicality, pure legalese, pure lawyers at $5,000 an hour arguing over stuff that, as I say, the average punter has no idea about.
Well, we've had a lot of talk too about the match review sort of matrix, haven't we, over the last couple of weeks? I know it was a hot topic at the CEO's conference over the last few days. I mean, is it safe to say, guys, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater just yet, but this is going to come under review?
Well, we need a Matrix revolution or a reload, don't we, in the famous franchise series, Ralphie, don't we? We need some change somewhere.
Yeah, look, I've spoken to a lot of people today, and I think that one of the ways we could do it, and again, this is not about the rule of law, but this is just about the MRO, is that you have the capacity to throw up incidents ungraded. So clearly with Charlie Cameron, I think Michael Christian would have thought this is definitely a three-weeker. But certainly with the Bedford situation, they thought, not quite sure. It's a really low threshold. Did it just get to careless? And so I think in that situation, you throw them up ungraded. Or the other option is, instead of the capacity to cause serious injury, which is to elevate a charge, 1 week to 2, 2 weeks to 3, you have a really stiff test and say it was really stiff that bloke got suspended and concussed.
So I've got the good bloke rule now. Stiff
factor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the reverse of that. And so Michael Christian might say, for instance, for Toby Bedford, we give him a 1 weeker or a 2 weeker again. Now that's separate to the Charlie Cameron situation, but
I think they copped that.
Yeah,
in some ways.
Yeah. So clearly, with the AFL Chief Executives Conference, what happened is that they were having a couple of beers as the deliberations came in. They got angrier and angrier and more boisterous, and they said, hey, let's table this one tomorrow as an informal item. And then at that part of the CEO's conference, the AFL said, we'll review it. So it's absolutely going to be up for review. But again, we've got even more confusion now.
Well, let's get the detail now, because Fox Footy's David Zita has been firmly parked in front of that Charlie Cameron Appeals Board hearing. Zeets, I know you're well across this in all of these hearings over the last few months, but what actually played out tonight? Because the country roads are taking him straight back to the footy field, Charlie Cameron.
It's very good, Loz. Look, I think it's good to note here, the appeal board is very much, it is legal. It is so legal. If you think the tribunal is legal, this goes to the whole other level of what, in terms of a court of law and how these things work. So effectively what has happened is laws of Australian football in 18.17.1, it says that for rough conduct, a player shall be protected from unreasonable conduct from an opposition player, which is likely to cause injury. Those last few words are key because what the appeal board found after it was argued by the Lions successfully is that the tribunal didn't consider whether Charlie Cameron's actions had the potential or were likely to cause injury because they didn't expressly consider that in their reasons, and that is why it was ultimately disallowed. And in the Appeals Board's view, it had a material impact on the outcome of the case. So the Appeal Board itself said that watching the vision, it couldn't conclude Cameron's conduct was likely to cause injury. And the Appeal Board said, had the tribunal have found that it was likely to cause injury, potentially that appeal doesn't get off. But because they didn't when they were deliberating the tribunal on Tuesday night, that is why this case has ultimately been successful for the Brisbane Lions. It is effectively a technicality rather than any sort of commentary on the tackle itself and the legality of it.
So who stuffed this one up? So, of course, with the Patrick Cripps decision, we saw that Jeff Gleeson, who was the tribunal boss, should have directed the appeals board, should have directed the jury to make certain mention of whether it was a tackle or not. Is this a lack of direction there in the tribunal hearing on Tuesday night?
Well, potentially. And Renee Embolm was the chairperson for this case. Jeff Gleeson was the one for the Patrick Cripps case. Now, in this case, regardless of the tribunal and its composition, I think the ultimate ruling was that there was just an error in not specifically referring to the fact that this was likely to cause injury. And they were, in essence, disregarding the laws of Australian football by doing that because it's a two-pronged rough conduct. It's obviously unreasonable and it's likely to cause injury. So that is what they didn't regard, the second part of that, and that is why this has got off. So again, it's a procedural thing that's gotten them off at this time rather than any real commentary on what the tackler was meant to do or whether it was good or not. So it really is a lot of legalese there, but the ultimate outcome is that Charlie Cameron's free to play because of effectively a technicality.
Zeets, we know we need an appeals board, but is there a better way we can do this? I have to sit through Isaac Heaney and the legalistic stuff last week, and you've done that tonight. Is there a better way to do this?
Oh, potentially. There's a better way to do everything, I guess, Macca, but it's difficult to say. I think effectively the tribunal's just made an error in the appeal board's eyes, at least, in terms of how they've referred and how they've given their reasons for this case. That is why. It was about directions in the Patrick Cripps case a couple of years ago, and it was about the reasons in this case. So maybe people make mistakes once every so often. Maybe this was one of them. In the appeal board's eyes, it was. In some other people's eyes, maybe it didn't have that much of an impact. But I think regardless of what you think, the ultimate outcome is that the Lions have argued this is one of the best appeal board cases I've heard because it is going to that error of law and the very technicality-laden part of the guidelines, which is where you find the most success in these things because the appeal board is about the law rather than the act itself.
Well, Ralphie, you spoke about the CEOs and the beers that they had in Perth. I think Brisbane coach Chris Fagan could be forgiven for cracking one open as we speak. Of course, Charlie Cameron is back in his team. He was asked this morning about the confusion for coaches when instructing their players how to tackle.
It's difficult because, you know, we all sit there and watch the game. You guys are the same. You watch a bloke, if he doesn't go hard at the tackle or gets a tackle broken or whatever, we're critical of them. Tackle making and tackle breaking are incredibly important parts of our game, and they happen in an absolute split second. And then we sit back with the benefit of slow motion replays and break it all down and turn it into something bigger than it actually is. But there's a lot of pressure on players. And I don't want my blokes going out there second-guessing tackles. It's an instant action, you know. If you see an opposition player is about to get the ball, close the gap as quickly as you can and lay the tackle in a legal way. Don't give away a free kick. Don't let the player get the ball out. That's how we coach it. And that's how we should coach it. And that's how we've coached it for years and years and years. So we might, we'll wait and see what happens, whether we have to coach it differently or not. But I don't want my players corralling and not putting the right amount of pressure on the opposition with the ball. So for the time being, we won't be changing anything.